Welcome back to Nostalgia Club. My name's Jino Jang, and I'm going to try really hard to do an American accent next to two Australian actors. All right, here it goes. My name is White Man. I'm a Jaeger pilot. It's like 90% of what I was thinking through the entire movie. I really did that to him. And you'll hear more of these thoughts
on
right
this
now.
episode of the Nostalgia Club.
Hit it! Theme music.
What a wonderful theme track to that thing that we can't put in our podcast.
Welcome back to Nostalgia Club. I'm here with
Michael
and
Jino.
And we are three sound designers who are here to talk about our favorite books, shows, movies, everything that we watched as kids and are revisiting as adults to see if we still like it, if it's still just as good of a form of escapism as it was when we were young. Today we're talking about Pacific Rim, if you couldn't tell by Michael's amazing rendition of the theme song.
The intro to the theme song.
Yeah. Giant robots, giant monsters. They fight a lot. The soundtrack is amazing. I love this movie. I'm very excited for this episode.
It's great. It's funny that you say they fight a lot, because really they don't fight a whole lot in the movie. I mean, I guess they do fight a lot.
There's like 4 giant monster fights.
I think there's like 2. No, there's 3.
There's one at the beginning for Raleigh and his brother fighting the kaiju.
Yeah.
Then there's the one when Raleigh first gets to the... Oh, I guess it is 3.
Yeah.
Well, unless you
there's
count...
snippets of little fights.
Yeah.
unless you count the clip of the Australian team fighting, on the TV.
Striker
I think
Eureka.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe because in my head, there's like the big fight between the Chinese team and the Russian team and then the Australian team. And then when Raleigh and Mako come in, that's like a separate fight.
Yeah.
With their Jaeger.
Yeah,
so.
wet fight and dry fight.
Yeah.
I consider it the same because it's the same, it's like an anime, right? It's like you have the antagonist and then like some good guys fight and then the good guys get beat and then another group of good guys comes in. It's like all part of like the same
That's fair.
arc fight.
Well, I will say this. Normally, I hate it when it's just like giant robot fight for like a really long time and it feels kind of meaningless. But when I was watching Pacific Rim, at least for me personally, none of the fights felt that way.
Yeah.
Like they all felt like the stakes were high. I was locked in. I was invested in the action. And I think it's because I'm invested in the characters. And also there's like a really great, I guess, sense of human effort that you're like rooting for. Like you want them to not die, essentially.
Yeah. No, I remember first seeing this movie in theaters and not necessarily knowing what to expect, but it captured that like feeling really well. The stakes of, it's the end of days, monsters from beyond the veil, emerging from the deep to take Earth by storm. And, in the face of bureaucracy and the collapse of, systems, we are humanity's last stand, us and our giant robots that we pilot with 2 pilots because left brain, right brain make robot go stomp.
And the drama it produces.
And the drama it produces, the somewhat vague drama it produces.
The trauma it produces as well. That's the main reason we did it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
For those of you who don't know what Pacific Rim is, please watch it.
Yeah.
But also, essentially, big fissure in the ocean. Bottom of the ocean floor open up. Giant alien come through and attack seaside cities like Godzilla. Humanity go, oh no, what do we do? Build giant robot that punches the alien so good that it becomes like a non-issue. But then aliens get too strong. All the big robots blow up except for like 4 of them. And this pilot who lost his brother in tragic robot fight has to come back and redeem his honor. No, not that. He has to come back and help humanity stay alive. He meets this woman who also has a similar tragic backstory, and they have to work together and get over their trauma together to make their big robot punch the monster really good and send them back to the Shadow Realm. And Idris Elba's there, and he gives a big speech.
Yeah.
He's so good. Idris Elba, incredible.
Watching back this movie, I have to admit, so much of this was way cornier than I remember. I don't know how old I was when I saw it the first time.
It's not corny. I'm invested. I believe it, Michael.
Oh, I'm invested. But like, you know, when Charlie Day goes up to other actor whose name I don't remember and like holds out his hand in like an Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, give me your fists, you know, kind of thing handshake and goes, say it with me. We're going to rock this thing, my man. I'm like.
But then it's like, it's so funny because he's also like, yes, we will do the thing.
Yeah, like his scientist counterpart who is like doing a whole character actor thing. Yes, he like pats his hand and does the I'm the officious, less, you know, rock and roll nerd, Harvard graduate man. It works.
Their dynamic is my favorite part of the movie, and they ruined it. They ruined it in the second movie.
We don't talk about this. We're not here to talk about the second movie.
You're right. What second movie?
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
I honestly didn't even watch it. So it turns out I did watch the second movie because I found an entire text thread to a friend of me reacting to it, but clearly it was so bad that I immediately blocked it from my memory. So I still have zero recollection of even watching this movie.
Oh my God.
I got bad vibes from the trailer, and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm just going to wait. And then predictably, the reviews were like, no good.
I was excited for John Boyega to be in it, but then
Yeah.
I heard that it was not, like, just structure of the story.
He
Was,
did his best.
Yeah.
Pacific Rim 1, though.
Okay, so it feels corny, yes, but it leans into it in a way that makes it feel very authentic. No one's doing a bit.
When I say this is corny as all hell, I'm not saying that it equals bad.
Yeah, no, I
I'm saying
understand.
that like Pacific Rim is a Saturday morning cartoon writ large, and I love cartoons.
Well, that's the thing. It's like when I first watched Pacific Rim, I never would have expected that it would have the impact that it had on me because it's not a genre that I typically go for.
Sure.
Like, I'm really not into like Godzilla, or I guess like in a way, like maybe because I watched Power Rangers, like it is similar in the sense of like they form a giant robot and then they fight the giant alien monster. So it has that, which this movie is very much paying homage to that genre of media as well. But yeah, I don't know. Something about this movie, as soon as I watched it, it just like had me in an iron grip and it hasn't let me go ever since.
It does capture something.
Yeah.
It's hard to put into words. It's weird. I feel like the best watch you can have of Pacific Rim is your first watch. I feel
I
like
don't know, every single... Sorry.
no, Victoria's like, good point. You're wrong.
I've
No-
watched this movie so many times, you guys.
Well, here's the thing. Your first watch locked you in.
Yeah, that's
when,
true.
Like you said, any other kind of content like this would not have done it.
Yeah.
So it captures something.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Like, you can't recreate the first watch moment. But I do think a large part of why every rewatch is great for me is because the music evokes the familiar feelings of that first watch for me. Every time I hear the soundtrack, I'm like right back to that moment where I first watched the movie. So every time I watch the movie again, I remember the way that I felt when I first watched it.
I will say I had a similar, this was one of those soundtracks that
Yeah.
after the movie came out, I just listened to over and over.
I listen to that soundtrack when I'm writing, when I'm studying. It gets me really focused really quickly. So it's great.
In the vein of the whole idea of this being a Saturday morning cartoon, literally the main theme is structured like a Saturday morning cartoon theme. You get quick intro, heroic motif, then it descends into uh-oh, the villains, bum 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 bum, and then it resurges with the reprise of the heroic theme again.
That's true, yeah.
It's just perfect.
It's so good.
It's perfect.
Also, Tom Morello does all the guitar stuff.
Right, which, come on.
Come on.
Come
All
on.
the wiki, 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 wiki. Which I am not. I will never pretend to be some sort of like musical super fan. I don't know a lot about Tom Morello. I know he's a very, very cool guy. I also know him mainly as the first boss in Guitar Hero 3. That's my main Tom Morello interface. But he has such a unique style. I think he like custom builds his guitars with like big touch screens that like have electrical inputs, and when you put your finger on it, it like does the electricity thing and it goes wacka 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 wacka. Cool guy. Pretty cool guy.
I mean, this is a soundtrack that makes full use of him. Like, everything is electric guitar. Absolutely
Because
everything.
it's big metal guy.
Yeah.
Big robot. It's gotta be.
Well, I want to know then, Victoria, if this is something that would not have in pretty much any other context landed with you, but landed with you in this context, why do you think it did so?
Okay, so I was thinking about this last night when I was rewatching. And I don't know if this is the conclusion I came to, but I think this is maybe a key reason. I think it's very important to understand that when I first watched Pacific Rim, I was also in my Attack on Titan phase.
Okay.
And there are a lot of parallels between Attack on Titan and Pacific Rim.
End of the world vibes.
End of the world.
Giant things coming to kill
threats,
us.
Humanity having to work together to resolve the thing. Also, it was like the robots are called Jaegers. The main character in Attack on Titan is named Eren Jaeger. It was like a huge thing in the Attack on Titan fandom. They were like, it's the same.
He's traumatized. Raleigh's traumatized.
Yeah, lots of trauma. The characters bond over their trauma.
Military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the subsequent failure of said complex.
The second reason is the concept of drift compatibility. Just like everyone on Tumblr was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
That'll
really
do it.
latched onto the internet.
Yes, it literally became an entirely new genre of fan fiction tropes.
I'm sure. Well,
Yeah.
For those who maybe don't quite recall, the drift in Pacific Rim is, since you need two pilots to pilot a Jaeger, those pilots have to be what's called drift compatible, which means they have to be able to basically like link up neurally and segue through each other mentally in such a way that they can be telepathically linked through technology.
It requires like a huge amount of trust and willingness to be vulnerable, because when you are linked in the drift, you hear and feel every thought and emotion.
Which is like chum in the water for Tumblr.
Yeah.
For fan fiction and anything you can imagine.
Take two character. Oh, they don't like each other. Oh, but they're drift compatible. And now they kiss.
Which, strangely enough, I know we're getting into like later spoilers, the two lead characters that are drift compatible in this movie, no kiss.
No
Yeah.
kiss.
No kiss at the end.
There's a lot of staring.
Yeah.
And I do need to apologize, Victoria. I misremembered. We talked about this earlier off the pod, and I was like, oh, there's no romance. There's definitely something going on, but they don't, like, it's not the main point.
There's what I consider like the platonic ideal of romance,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Well, it's like not sexual, but it is romantic.
Yeah. I think it's like maybe the appeal of Pacific Rim to people is that you can interpret Mako and Raleigh's relationship as either platonic or romantic. It works either way.
Yeah.
There's really great qualities and interpretations to both versions, I think. But I think it just speaks to, like, I don't think that Pacific Rim would have done as well as it did if the two main characters weren't so compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it would have done worse if it was overtly romantic.
Mm-hmm.
Because, one, that's a very short amount of time to get to know someone. But
That's
also,
true,
two,
yeah.
like, the point of their relationship is to heal together.
Yeah.
The point is not to become romantically linked, which is fine. You can have a character interaction like that. But I think it's like the ending of Rogue One. Like, that would have ruined it completely if they were like, and now Jin and Cassio kiss. Or Cassian kiss. Like,
Casio keyboard.
now this alcohol and this Casio keyboard would kiss. No, it would have ruined it.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They just comfort each other because they're going to die. It's like that, but they don't, because the Pacific Rim, they're fine.
Yeah.
Spoilers, they're fine.
Oh no, Rogue One is spoiled forever. No. I think also the world building for me is really good. And just like this movie managed to make you sad in the first 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Raleigh loses his brother Yancey, like you can feel it. And I think it's like maybe because they spend the time explaining how the drift works. And then when his brother is yanked out of the Jaeger, you're like, oh, shoot. that is devastating on
that's a
so
bad
many
sign.
levels. Yeah. Not only is it like obviously losing your brother in any context is horribly tragic and sad, but the fact that you feel his pain and every thought running through his head up until the moment he's gone is like, oh, shoot. Yeah.
And then the image of the Jaeger walking onto the beach
Yeah.
through the fog,
Yeah.
and this father and son are like, oh.
Yeah, I think this movie did a great job of making the world and the stakes feel very large, but also focusing on just the right elements to get you to care and invest in the story.
There is a lot of dialogue. Well, there's a couple things. The opening of that movie does a lot because it goes, it has to, like, another movie would have gone, here's what happened. Giant alien monsters have come out of the ocean, and now we've made robots and have to fight them. But instead, this movie goes, giant alien monsters come out of the ocean, we made robots to fight them, and then we got really good at fighting the aliens, and then an entire, like, cultural shift changed around these alien monsters, and then things got worse, and now we're not as good at fighting the monsters anymore. And so it, like, has to cover this, like, wide swath of time that you could have made, like, a whole movie about before it reaches, like, the part where it wants to begin its story.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a lot of situations that would have been too much to bite off, but they pull it off.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of the dialogue is about world building. Like, a lot of it, you can tell, like, they just put a lot of, like, research into ideas of, like, oh, and then kaiju blue is the blood that, like, leaks into the water, and, like, here's all this black market information about kaiju parts. Like, half of, what's the actor's name? Ron Perlman. Half of Ron Perlman's dialogue is like
Hannibal Chow.
Hannibal Chow is just, let me tell you about all the parts of the kaiju that I use and what they're used for. All the phosphorus and the poop and the bone powder does this and this does that. The brain has too much ammonia. It's just like you can tell that they were like creating a playground practically to play in. And anytime that they're not doing that or having the scientists be like, here's all the science fictional explanation of how, like, the drift works and how the breach works and how the aliens work. Anytime they're not doing that, they're literally just swapping back to those two lead characters. And it's a wild thing to watch play out because you're, like, vacillating back and forth between two, like, here's something that's just about two people, like, talking about their trauma and processing. And then here's my Google Doc about all the lore of my alien world.
And also Charlie Day's there, and he's going nuts. It's paced, I agree, it's paced out in a way that it feels like they took an entire season of anime and they squashed it down and then they made it work.
Yeah.
There are scenes in that movie, like the intro scene. The intro montage is brilliantly done. I was so impressed watching it again. They created so many shots. They filmed so many locations that they never use again. Also, Obama's there. That was a jump scare. Really date the movie. But
actually, sorry, this movie is set in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, is it set in 2020 or is 2020 when Raleigh loses his brother?
The majority of the movie is in 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Obama is properly placed in the timeline.
Okay.
Because the montage took place before that.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure. But like the first few major story beats.
Yancey and Raleigh pilot in 2020.
Oh.
Yeah.
Obama was not properly placed.
Well, I think Obama in the... This is a weird topic conversation. I think Obama's placement in the timeline still works because it's referencing, like, when the first attacks happened.
Yeah. Because when Yancey and Raleigh start the movie, that's, like, at the peak of when the Jaeger program was... No, sorry. That's, like, near the end. Sorry.
It's near the end of the golden days.
Yeah.
Obama left his term on a high note. He was like, the Jaegers are working.
Yeah.
See you guys, I'm retiring. The next president steps in and goes, oh, they're not working anymore. build up. Never mind.
You were going to say build a wall, which is what they did in the
make the connection. I didn't make the connection.
Kind of wild how that lines up, though.
Oof. Guillermo del
2020
Toro.
is when things start going downhill in a big way.
But the point I was trying to make is the first few scenes could have been stretched out into whole episodes. And it felt like there was enough there to do it. And yet the movie also feels like it's not rushing things and it's not leaving things out. Like there's a whole extra character, Raleigh's friend. Raleigh's like Kookie's best friend side character who doesn't have a name. He's just like there.
On the wall.
And he looks like the best friend character.
Yeah.
He talks like it, but he's not important. They really like cast this guy and they fleshed out his story and they were like, you get like a minute.
Yeah.
That could have been a whole episode. There could have been a whole episode dedicated to like, and now I work on the wall. He's my best friend and he's kind of funny, but he's got my back. And I'm traumatized. And oh, they're not giving us enough food and people die on the wall. And here comes my old boss to bring me back to the fight. And the movie's like, whoop, boss is here. Let's go.
But like you get all of that just in the small moments that it shows you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of goofy, but they play it so seriously. You can't help but respect the world and the characters. And also Idris Elba. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he tells you to get on the helicopter, you get on the helicopter.
That's true.
I really do think they could adapt the movie into a full animated show.
And
I also think they could make a pretty compelling movie about like the first Jaeger.
Yeah, like the prequel.
Yeah. No sequels, please.
Yeah.
'Cause
I almost feel like they
they-
should have done a prequel instead of a sequel.
Yeah.
Although I vaguely read something where like the only reason why Guillermo del Toro wasn't involved in Pacific Rim 2 was because he was making The Shape of Water and they like couldn't get like the filming schedule to work. And so he was out
Guillermo del Toro has a really great track record of dipping out of movies.
right when they're going to get bad.
Yeah. He sort of like bobs and weaves away from critical disasters. If I could briefly mention something in the second movie to bring it back to the first movie, because I know we don't want to talk too much about this fictional fan fiction that happened. But a really big complaint about this fictional sequel is that the Jaegers feel weightless.
Yeah.
And the fights don't feel impactful because they kind of do the action movie thing where like you get punched, but you're fine. But in Pacific Rim, every punch leaves permanent damage.
Yeah.
Like the main big boy Jaeger gets messed up
Yeah.
3 times. Like seriously messed up.
Those mechanics are working like round the clock
Where are
to
they getting
get
all
these
that
Jaegers.
metal? Yeah. Hats off to the mechanics.
Yeah. I mean, the
That's
fact
true.
that like it gets destroyed in one fight and then like a few days later is like ready to go again. I was like, okay.
I'm trying to think, like, between that major fight around the middle of the movie and, like, the ending fight,
It's not a lot of time.
I think it's, like, less than a day.
Yeah.
Those mechanics.
Those mechanics.
Hope they're getting paid well.
Well, they lost all their budget. They lost all their funding.
That's true.
But it's sort of a, if we don't do this, we're all going to die scenario.
Yeah. I mean, when they show that shot of like the entire rest of the base watching for how the mission went,
Yeah.
I'm assuming those must be all the mechanics.
At least in that area, we'll
Yeah,
say.
in that area, I guess. But there's like a lot of them. I imagine like each one's like, okay, I'll work on like the hand and then you work on the knee. And, like,
Victoria, you know more about this than I do. Is there a reason why they put the pilots in the head and then they drop the head a significant amount of distance onto this already very tall robot and then they kind of screw the head in? Or was that done to be cool?
I'm honestly not sure. Yeah, I don't know enough about it. I guess from like a technical standpoint, I could see that maybe it's just logistically easier to transport the head with the pilots onto the Jaeger because it's so massive. Like in order to get all the way up there, you'd need like a series of like ladders and elevators and all that.
But the head is already farther up than the Jaeger. So they need to go
Oh,
even farther
you're
up
right.
to get to the head.
I'm not sure. That's a question for Mr. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. I'm sure you could create, like, reasons for it that make sense in world. I
Mhm.
think perhaps the big reason was that it gives them an excuse to not feel like they need to reveal the full Jaeger yet.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that you can have the pilots go into the head, do that really freaking cool sequence where they're
Yeah.
getting plugged in and like seeing all the apparatuses of the Jaeger head go to work, and they're doing like the sync up. They got the little hand thing that allows
Mhm.
them to control one
Mhm.
side of the Jaeger or the other. And then you can put the head on the Jaeger and
Yeah,
be like,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is the boy.
It's about making it make just enough sense to where you're like, okay, I buy it. But then making it so cool that you have no choice but to buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's so cool.
Oh, gosh. And then once you buy in, you're along for the ride.
Yeah.
Just completely.
The art design in this world.
Oh my gosh. There's a moment where they're in Hannibal Chow's like underground kaiju selling place, and like someone lifts up what's called a kaiju skin mite.
Yeah.
And I think
Mm.
that is a fully maybe they just did a great job with the CGI or like blending practical with the CGI elements, but it looked like a fully animatronic, like little like grub thing that a dude is holding. And it's on screen for maybe like a second.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got like all these articulated limbs and its own little sound design. And it's like gone in a moment. So much on this movie is like
It's incredible.
practical.
And the sound design.
Oh my gosh.
I once did a short film involving big robots. I should have watched Pacific Rim right before, because I could have
Yeah.
made those footsteps way better.
We live and learn.
It's okay.
Mine sounded too hollow, which I guess is okay because it was a hollow robot. But still,
Sounds like you did a good job.
thanks.
Victoria,
Yes.
what's your favorite character in this? Or is that
Yeah.
like a fool's errand question?
It's so obvious.
I'm not going to make any assumptions. Maybe.
It's Raleigh's best friend from the wall.
Yeah!
No, Mako is my favorite character.
Yeah, Mako's pretty great.
Yeah.
Mako's so cool.
There are some people who say that this story should have been structured with Mako as the primary like protagonist and then Raleigh as sort of the secondary protagonist. Would you fall into that camp?
I could see that. I mean, I wouldn't complain about more Mako, but I do think part of the reason her story works so well and is so impactful is because you don't know what happened to her at the beginning. Part of it is Raleigh is uncovering what her childhood trauma was, what her relationship to Stacker Pentecost is, and why she's so important to him. If it had been Mako's story, I think we would have not gotten to see as much of the world. Part of the benefit of the start of the movie is you see the Jaeger program, but then you also see what's happening outside of the Jaeger program because you see Raleigh building the wall, like doing construction. And then you go into the military base and all of that stuff. If it had been Mako's story, because she's like always around the Marshal, then that's what we would have seen. We would have seen more of the military, political side of things. And I think the world building I'm sure they could have still done it, but I think it would have been different.
Also, she never got to pilot a Jaeger until the
Yeah,
movie.
she's never gotten to pilot. I think it would have been more focused on like her training and then like her desire to be a pilot and the research that she does and all that kind of stuff, which I think would be very interesting. Again, like Jino said, like if they expanded this into a TV series, that's when we would get more of that backstory for her. But I think personally for me, the decision to make things from Raleigh's perspective served the world building and the story better.
Mm-hmm. I've seen this sentiment online, and I kind of agree with it. I feel like some people have a hard time connecting with Raleigh because he feels sort of stiff. He wasn't as bad as I had remembered and I'd read when I rewatched it recently, but he's just not as interesting of a character as like Mako or Pentecost or even the Australians. I don't know. I'm sure there's something about that, but I just don't connect with him as much. He
That's
just
fair.
seems like standard sad white man, cardboard cutout man. Here he is.
Yeah.
He's buff.
It's probably, to venture a guess, Raleigh's big thing, aside from like, I lost my brother, is I was still connected to him mentally when he went. That's
Mhm.
something he brings up a lot. And it's potentially harder for us to understand the nature of that, especially because it's only talked about, versus what we see Mako go through, which is just like, I'm scared in a city and there's a giant crab coming after me. In some ways, it's easier to latch onto this idea of like Mako's, the world came for me when I was young and now I'm coming for the world kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument to be made with that. I mean, as with everything. When I think of like the inverse relationship of like protagonist, secondary protagonist, or like the focus of the deuteragonists, if you prefer, one idea that sells it for me more is like if we started with like Mako's backstory, which like Victoria points out would be a tougher sell in terms of like showing the nature of what it is to pilot a Jaeger at the top of the film. You would have to maybe like relegate that to Pentecost.
Yeah.
One of the opportunities it does present is in the middle of the film when Mako and Raleigh are doing like that test, the neural handshake and the Jaeger, and things go awry. Instead of that being the reveal for Mako's backstory and her relationship with Pentecost, it could be a reveal for exactly what went down with Raleigh and Mako not getting lost in her own backstory, but in Raleigh's, which potentially is obscured behind the fact that like they were off the grid in a lot of ways when it went down.
Yeah.
And her understanding like why this guy is a wash up and why he is so reluctant.
Yeah.
And potentially that could, depending on how it was filmed, and I would trust them to be able to pull it off given everything else about this movie, convey the idea that they keep coming back to of I was connected to my brother when he died.
Mm-hmm.
Like potentially give them the opportunity to convey that a little more like cinematically. But
Yeah,
that's the
because it
main
happens so
difference.
fast in the beginning of the movie because they have so much to get through.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were able to take more time with the brother, maybe in flashbacks or something, maybe it would feel more impactful.
Yeah. But hey, what are you going to do? We got a perfect movie, so
Yeah.
sorry to complain.
I really like your concept of what it would look like if it was Mako as the protagonist. But I also almost feel like, I mean, obviously it would still be very sad and devastating if you start the movie seeing like this young child who's lost her family and is rescued by Stacker Pentecost. But okay, so one thing is that I feel like not having met Mako as a character yet, when you see that, means that you might not feel the impact as much in connection with Mako. Like, I think you would just be like, oh, like, this is a horrible event that happened to this young girl. And then you'd have to slowly get to know Mako's character a bit more. So I
Yeah.
think it still works. I just think it's like, it's a different, like, vibe going into the movie. My second thing is, one of the things I noticed in that scene in particular on this rewatch, which I'm sure I noticed before, but I just like kind of thought about it more, is that scene with Mako, I think is stylized because it's a drift memory. If you're really thinking realistically and there's like this huge kaiju attacking the city, I think there would be like screaming people in the background, like lots of chaos, like maybe other people like fighting or like yelling, like a lot more like loud chaos going on. Obviously it's like still loud, but it's mostly focused on this tiny girl is in the city alone. There's no one else around. And
Yeah.
she's being pursued by a giant monster.
Also that she's being directly targeted by
Yeah.
the monster, which is, besides Charlie Day, not something we're told ever happens.
Yeah, I think it really is like, that's how it felt for her
Mm.
as a young child, is her family's gone, she's all by herself, regardless of if there were people around her. And I mean, I guess you could say like, well, everyone else died, and so she's the only one left. But I personally interpret it as that's how she remembers the moment. Because especially when Stacker Pentecost finally shows up and rescues her, the framing and like the lighting is very like, he's literally like a guardian angel who's rescued her. And so the impact of that is strengthened by it being a drift memory, rather than if we had seen it at the beginning of the movie as it was happening in
Right.
actuality.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a huge point in favor of the keep it as is thing, because it does, like you said, it does provide a lens into Mako's perspective
Mhm.
that is like vital for her character, given that she's been obscured by a lot of mystery, you know, given to the plot
Mhm.
and the story up until that moment.
Yeah.
Oh, voice crack.
If I could toss my hat in, I think keeping the story as it is not only benefits Mako,
Mm-hmm.
but because Mako's backstory is tied so intrinsically to Pentecost's backstory,
Mm.
if you had flipped it, then we'd have two characters we understand and one character we don't.
Yeah.
But the way it is, we have one character we understand and two characters we don't, which gives for a more dramatic reveal.
Yeah.
And it lets Pentecost's arc sort of come to fruition more.
Yeah.
Because before, like, if we know it coming into the movie, then there's almost like less of an arc. Because
Yeah.
part of it is him opening up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like a majority of his arc is that he is trying to remain the stoic anchor for everyone else because he is in charge. He can't show any struggle or weakness because if he shows fear or like anything, everyone else is going to freak out. But you see small moments of like, okay, he's clearly ill, something's going on. It's probably to do with this whole like drift thing where your brain gets fried and stuff. But you don't really know like the implications. And then you're like, oh, he also, well, I mean, part of it was like generation 1 of Jaegers were just a
Nuclear
different,
bombs.
yeah, like different materials and stuff. But also, he also had to solo pilot.
The implication then being that the Russian Jaeger is also doing stuff to the Russian pilots because it's also Gen 1.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they shored that up over time.
I would hope so.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. A lot of iodine supplements or something.
A lot of vitamins.
Speaking of which, we were kind of talking about this earlier, but like the nature of the fights. I think one of those big reasons that for you, Victoria, those like fights landed really well is because when you look at those fights, they're so economic. I feel like this season we talk about the economy of storytelling a lot.
Yeah.
But it's true, like not only in all the stuff we've been talking about in Pacific Rim and whatnot, but specifically the fights, like with a number of these like battles, specifically with Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha, the Jaegers from China and Russia, respectively. There's like so little time given to them to fight.
We barely, and also, I was going to say, we don't even see those characters very much. They're basically like, not the throwaway characters, but I mean, they kind of are. It's just like...
They're featured background extras.
Yeah. But even then, you don't want them to die. You want them...
Because they're cool. They're all so cool.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's like Crimson Typhoon has like the special, like, there's 3 pilots instead of just 2. And then the Russian people are just cool Russian people. They're like super
with wild
buff.
hair.
Yeah, they're like buff and they like look cool and intimidating. So, yeah.
I did see like a blog post or something of someone who was like a specific fan of those Russian pilot characters and was like every aspect of their behavior, like how they act in every scene, even when they're just like in the background, you don't notice, they're so consistent all the way up until the end when they're like actively clawing through the water as they're like drowning in the chassis of their suit as a giant gorilla kaiju slams into them.
What a way to go.
What a way to go.
Yeah.
Crimson Typhoon is such a cool robot.
Mm-hmm.
Those like 3 saw arms going. The inside of the head is like unique from the others in that it's constantly like spewing steam all over the place.
Yeah.
It's got little jets in the back so that every move that it makes is supported by the like firing of different jets.
It's those little details that they actually put care and thought into designing each Jaeger, each kaiju, like every moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second movie, they're just kind of big guys doing flips, breakdancing. Can we talk about the second B plot? The second B plot? Can we talk about the B plot?
I was trying to think, is there a second B plot, otherwise known as a C plot?
Because I only know Charlie Day. I don't know the names of their characters. I just know
It's Newt and Herman.
Newt and Herman.
We can trust Victoria to
Victoria,
know.
number
I'm
one
too
Pacific
into
Rim
this
fan.
movie, guys.
How much AO3 is there of Newt and Herman?
Oh, so much, probably.
Listen, Newt and Herman are in love.
Yeah.
Which is why the second movie is so terrible. Because it ruins the relationship. But watching the first movie again, Newt and Herman subplot felt like so unnecessary all the way up until the very end when it suddenly became the most necessary.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is so disconnected from what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, we like to study things. We want to know. And we don't really need to know. I mean, at the time, they thought they didn't really need to know. But we're going to know anyway.
I think it works because the two of them, they believe that this is absolutely crucial to the final mission.
Yes.
Like what they are doing, like predicting how many kaiju are going to emerge from the breach, trying to drift with a literal kaiju brain. They're like, we have to do this. This is like first of all, I think they're like, this is our last chance. Like, if this plan doesn't work, then we're never going to get a chance to do this anyways. But also, they're like, it's our job to provide as much research and knowledge to the pilots so that they don't just fly into their deaths, essentially.
Yeah.
And Pentecost takes them seriously.
Yeah.
Like he leaves that climactic test drive or whatever it was to talk to them because he's like, this matters.
Yeah.
Which makes you as the audience say, okay, yeah, it does matter.
Yeah.
But structure-wise, it doesn't matter up until the very, very end. And yet, they're just so evocative. They're extreme, almost like dramatized characterizations. And they're like dynamic with each other.
One of my favorite moments
Brilliant.
is after they drift with a kaiju brain, Herman feels like he needs to throw up, but instead of just like throwing up wherever, he's like, there's a toilet.
It's wreckage everywhere and in the midst of the wreckage. It's
not even like connected to anything. It's not like throwing up in the toilet is going to make a difference compared to throwing up anywhere else, but he's like, this is the one thing I got to do it. And he like throws up in the toilet. It's really funny.
And again, it works for his character.
Yeah.
He's like so structured, civilized. find the one disconnected toilet in the midst of all this chaos.
Yeah.
There's so much comedy, not just comedy, abstract comedy that gets shoved into this plot line. Like the death of Hannibal Chow, where he's
Gosh,
like,
that is such a weird sequence.
his whole character, his whole existence is weird. I think I read somewhere that Ron Perlman was like so excited to do this character just because it made no sense and it was so different from anything he'd done. And he was like, yeah. Yeah. He's like, you want me, a white man, to play Hannibal Chow? All right. I made this name up. I took it from my favorite restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that. And then you're like, yeah, okay, this guy's wacky. And then, the baby kaiju happens, bursts out, almost kills Newt. Sorry.
I got you. It's fine.
Almost
Victoria's
kills
got
Newt.
this on
Hannibal
lock.
Chow walks out just out of nowhere and he's like, I knew it would die. I knew it wouldn't live more than a second. Yeah, I know all these things. I'm so smart. Stab, stab, stab. Ha ha. So anyway, about this part, and then he just gets eaten. And you're like, wow.
He doesn't die though.
Oh, that's right. There's like a
There's
post-credit scene.
There's a post-credit scene.
I didn't see the post-credit scene.
He cuts himself out.
Yeah.
No.
So.
Good.
Oh my
But,
gosh.
There's no reason to have that sequence plot-wise, and yet you need it there because it's cool.
Every actor seems like they're just having a great time. I
mean,
don't know how to
also-
describe it.
I also think that sequence is interesting because it's still adding lore to the kaiju. It's like,
Yeah.
why are the kaiju sending a pregnant kaiju to colonize this world? Because obviously we don't get much of the kaiju perspective, but it's like these little lore drops of like, okay, it's like a hive mind. Okay, they just send kaiju through the breach to like ravage the earth. Okay, they also sent one that happens to be pregnant.
They fly now.
They fly
They
now.
fly.
Yeah, they each look different.
This is one of the reasons I think the first watch is the best.
Yeah.
Even though on a rewatch, you can appreciate all the detail, like all over the place.
Mhm.
That first watch, you don't care as much about, at least for me, you don't care as much about the idea that like the B plot is like, as far as we know, structurally like irrelevant, because you're just like, oh, we're going to go to like the underground black market kaiju place? Yeah, I want to see that. Oh, we're going to like, what's going on over here?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to like go to some like kaiju harvesting site and go inside like the corpse of a kaiju? Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. And also, like on a second rewatch, you might be asking, like, why didn't they pull out the sword before? But that's because like what you said earlier, way earlier. I'm going back to that. The fights are structured in a way where every move is a counter move to the previous move.
Yeah.
There's no wasted attack. Like, oh, you knocked me over here. I'm by shipping crates. I'm going to pick those up. That's my next attack. Oh, you let off an EMP pulse? That's what I'm going to target. Like, there's no incorrect strategy. And so, thus, like, you cut off my tail. I'm now light enough to fly. I'm up here now. Pull out the sword.
The
et cetera.
sword moment was so cool.
One could argue that instead of them using the boat sword, they could have used their sword.
But the boat sword!
I know, that's the counter argument. Is
Yeah.
like the boat sword is pretty cool though, right?
And also having a moment where you have these massive colossal beings who you would never miss. Like, you can't not see them. And then one of them vanishes.
Yeah.
And they can't find it. And you're like, what? What do you mean you can't find it? It was in the building.
The little moment where the Jaeger arm like stretches into a building and like taps on a desk chair, which bumps
Yeah.
into a desk and a little like
The
desk
Newton's
toy.
cradle.
They
Yeah,
do
the
that
Newton's cradle.
twice in that fight. Maybe they do it 3 times. But every
Like little
time,
moments like that.
yeah, every time they do it where it's like, big thing moving towards little thing, tap. Like, and it works every time.
It just helps break up the fight a little bit too.
Yeah.
It gives you a like brief sense of relief of like, okay, and then it's right back into it. Yeah.
So good.
Delightful.
So cool.
I already want to rewatch it again. It lives rent free in my head. I don't know.
Even amidst, we talked about the music way earlier at the top of this thing.
Mm.
There's that motif where I think we hear it in connection with Mako first. It's like in her character introduction, and it's this like soaring string motif. It's like da 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 da, and it's like everything else is like guitars
Yeah.
or like pretty like kind of like rhythmic sounds. Even Pentecost theme is just sort of like ba da 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 da, and you're like okay, but like there's this like really soaring like, and it makes me think of like in a more classical movie, it would be like probably called the romance theme.
Mm.
And it's just like, it just lands in a way that's unique to this movie because it's, I don't know, if you compare, it's an easy thing as a reach to say, compare it to the romance themes of something out of like Raiders or Star Wars. And this one has this like melancholic, darkly ambient string quality, this like heavy cello thing going on. And it just like, I remember watching, like anytime I would watch this would happen. But even now, like watching it back, like when Mako comes in and the shot is so perfect of her, like we don't even see her head at first. She's covered in this black umbrella and this like black trench coat as the rain is coming down. And like that shot of her from the back as she's standing as this helicopter is slowly landing in front of her. And right as that hits, Ramin, my man, composer extraordinaire, just hits us with the da 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 da, and you're like, oh my gosh,
It's really good.
chills.
You said his name Ramin, right?
I think it's Ramin.
He also did Game of Thrones, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not like the biggest Game of Thrones junkie in the world. I did see some of it. But one thing that's stuck out to me about Game of Thrones is that there's only really like 2 or 3, I'm going to say 3 iconic themes, right? Main theme,
Mhm.
Lannister theme, Daenerys' theme. And he scored a theme for every other, house or whatever. But like, I can't really like recall, like they're not like, they're kind of like Marvel music. They're kind of just like in the background. And so it's strange to me that for Pacific Rim, he went so hard on making very specific earworm, memorable themes. That's it. I like motifs. Maybe that's a little basic, but I really like motifs.
Motifs are so good.
Make me think of your character when I hear the music. Make me think of your music when I hear the character. Put it together and it's really good.
Mako's main song, like the score that plays when, like during the drift memories, it's so sad, but it's also like a little bit hopeful. I can't even put it into words. I was also freaking out earlier because you were talking about Mako's introduction scene when she walks out in the rain. And
I could see you have a visceral physical reaction.
I can't explain why I love it so much, but I really do. It's such a good character introduction. There's something so like you said, like the melancholy of it's raining, it's dark, she's wearing all black, she has a black umbrella. You don't know who she is, but she has this long sequence of walking up to the helicopter. So you know that she's important. You just don't know why yet. It's just so good.
Victoria, as the resident Mako expert, the scene where they're testing the recruits
Mhm.
and they're having like the staff fight, the bow staff fight, and Mako and Raleigh's rally, where their first few exchanges, it's almost like one of them strikes, the other one doesn't even move. It's almost like they're like teasing each other, testing each other.
I think it's meant to be like a taunt and kind of just like feeling each other out.
Mm-hmm. Is the
It's
point,
like a conversation.
yeah, is the point of the fight, because I didn't really get it, is the point of the fight to have an even score?
It's
This is one of those things everyone...
it's very abstract. I don't even quite understand it myself.
Okay.
Like this is like deep, like what does it even mean to be drift compatible?
Yeah.
I think like on a base level, drift compatibility is like how much chemistry do you have with someone? But it's also like, it's not an inherent thing. It's not like a fate thing where it's like 2 people are destined to be drift compatible. It's a conscious choice to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to open up to someone and let them read your thoughts, try to read their thoughts, try to like understand them on a deeper level, even if you actually don't know each other that well. So that's why siblings have a higher chance of being drift compatible, because there's already kind of a rapport of we know each other, we get each other, and then you don't have to work as hard to allow yourself to be vulnerable. Obviously, like some siblings might not be as close as others, but it's the general idea of like, I already know you. It's not as much of an ask to be vulnerable. But I think when Raleigh shows up again, it's hard for him to find a new partner, because before it was his brother. It was the person he was closest to in the world. And now these are strangers, but he's like open to it. He's like, I gotta try and figure it out. I guess with Mako and Raleigh, it's about, they're clearly both intrigued by each other. Mako's done a lot of research about Raleigh and the type of a pilot that he was. They've also had interactions before even that test where she's clearly like pushing him. Like, she's challenging him. She's like, I don't think that you're the right person for this mission.
Yeah, that's right.
So they have these moments where Raleigh's like, okay, she's like pushing back on me. Why is she doing that? And then he wants to get to know her more. And there's like a constant push and pull of the two of them trying to understand each other. And I think it all culminates into that test sequence where finally they're like, we're having this conversation, but it's all through fight moves. Yeah. That's my kind of like take on drift compatibility.
So the staff fight is a back and forth. Like you said, it was a conversation.
Yeah.
Where all the other fights are him just beating guys up.
I guess, like, I mean, because we didn't get to see a lot of it, but like this is me just like making assumptions on like scenes we didn't get to see. But what I imagine is like maybe these other people, they approached it more as a fight where they're like, this is a competition to become a pilot, to become his co-pilot, to maybe even like show that I'm better or like good at this, like a chance to like prove yourself. Whereas like I think Mako goes into it like, I know that I am your equal and I'm going to treat this as such.
Maybe it's something about being able to read the other person like physically, read their intention.
Yeah, I think the like physical aspect comes into it of being like able to read each other's moves.
Because Mako says you could have taken each of those guys 2 moves earlier.
Yeah.
So she's already like reading him like a book. Like this is how you could have done it.
Yeah.
And so that exchange is them being able to like understand each other to the point where they're on even ground. They're unable to truly best each other.
Yeah. Because I think when you drift with someone and you're in a Jaeger, you have to be thinking the same way. Because if one of you is like, okay, we should like punch with the left arm, but the other person is like, no, we should like use the plasma cannon on the right arm, you're going to be butting heads literally inside your minds. So I think that's part of the aptitude test is, do you think similarly? Can you read each other's thoughts before you're even in the neural drift lock of things?
Before you're even doing the test.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Follow-up question, now that you've spewed all that.
Okay.
So you're a big Pacific Rim fan.
Yes. I'm worried about what this question is going to be.
Have you seen Atlantic Rim?
It's pretty boring. They don't do a lot. No, because you talked about your alluded history, your alleged history with, fan communities online. Do you have any experience from your youth with Pacific Rim fan communities?
Victoria like removed a water bottle from the table, but it had the same energy as someone placing a gun on the table.
I was trying to do it away from the mic so it wasn't loud. Trying to think. I don't think I interacted with the Pacific Rim community that much. Again, I think it was literally like just the offshoot of like the concept of Pacific Rim in other fandoms that I got really into. Like the biggest fandom connection, I guess, crossover for me was Pacific Rim and Attack on Titan. Yeah.
Who were the characters they thought were drift compatible?
There was like endless debate.
What was your position? Did you have a position? Or did it come for you and you were like, I need a position here or else the world's going to leave me behind?
You guys are making me have to like dig up like really, really old memories now.
It's called Nostalgia Club.
For a reason.
Don't quote me on any of this because I honestly don't remember a lot of my personal opinions. And it's been a long, long time since I have been invested in Attack on Titan, and I'm no longer invested in Attack on Titan whatsoever. So, which is weird because like I was so into it in high school, and now I'm just like, I don't care about it at all. Anyways, there's like the obvious, like Eren and Mikasa are probably drift compatible because they are like childhood friends and in love or whatever.
Or whatever is doing a lot of work there.
They're friends.
Trying to think of this.
Ymir and Historia.
Ymir and Historia. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I could see like either of them as Jaeger pilots, though. That's the thing. Oh, a big one was like Jang and Mako would be drift compatible.
Yeah.
And then you have like the whole horrible thing of like Mako dying, but also like getting ripped out of a Jaeger. And because like in Attack on Titan, like he dies in kind of like a similar way. And it's like a whole thing. Probably like Sasha and Connie is probably one that people... It's just like all the common like Attack on Titan ships were probably like, they're drift compatible.
To be clear, these words and names mean nothing to me.
Okay.
But I think it's important. It's important for our listeners to know where you stand.
I can cut all of this out.
Oh, don't do that. My only experience with this whole drift compatibility thing is I know a little bit about Marvel drift compatibility for reasons.
Oh, interesting.
Marvel?
I never
you mean like
delved into that sector.
Steve and Tony and a big guy. Put on the helmets and make them cry. Da, 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 da.
I know there's like definitely other characters from like other fandoms who I was like, they're drift compatible. My best friend and I used to always joke that we would be drift compatible because sometimes, you know, like when you know someone for so long that like you start having telepathy and like start saying the same things. So sometimes when we do that.
Victoria, are we drift compatible? Wait, could all three of us man Crimson Typhoon?
Oh yeah, because Michael and I share brain cells.
I don't know if I'm drift compatible.
I don't know. We're all... I mean, look, we're three people on a podcast together.
You're right. You're absolutely
Instead of Crimson Typhoon, it's Azure Breeze.
Azure Breeze?
Instead of Crimson Typhoon.
This is like naming your D&D party.
Ooh, yeah. What would your Jaeger be called? No, again, like I said, drift compatibility is not about how well you inherently connect with another person. It's more of a conscious choice to allow yourself to be drift compatible.
So like Percy and Grover would be drift compatible.
Probably, yeah.
Because they have an empathy link.
Yeah.
Answer that question, Victoria. What would your Jaeger be called?
I don't know. Probably it'd have to be like I'd probably incorporate some variation of purple into the name because my favorite color is purple.
Purple Danger.
Purple Danger.
Well, let's see. We have the names Not Cool Word Danger. We have Cherno Alpha. Seems like an abbreviation of Chernobyl and Alpha, which is rough.
Interesting.
Crimson Typhoon.
That one's a pretty solid name.
Pretty solid. Striker Eureka. It's a very cool name.
Wow.
I don't know if we ever, or if it's expanded upon in like extra material, Pentecost's Jaeger's name. I thought it was like Wolf something.
I don't know if they ever say it in the movie.
I don't think they say it in the movie.
It might be in the second movie.
Pentecost Jaeger.
I think it'd be pretty cool to have an astrological themed Jaeger name.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Orion something. Like, I don't know, something like that. I don't know.
I don't think Orion is... Or were you talking about...
I meant like, not like star signs, not like Virgo and like Cancer and Libra, but I meant like constellation theme.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Pentecost's Jaeger was Coyote Tango.
Okay, so Wolf was close, but not quite.
Very close.
For some reason, I don't know. It doesn't have as much impact as I thought it would have.
Coyote Tango? Yeah, I mean, it was one of the first Jaegers. They were probably
That's
like,
true, yeah.
name it. Also, who's naming all the kaiju? Who's
That's
like,
true,
they're
yeah.
all like codename Ripper or whatever. And like, who's sitting there like, here, we got 2 kaiju. All right, what do they look like?
Yeah.
Think of a name. It's got to be thematic. We're going to fight them. So like, make it interesting.
Maybe they just have a database similar to how they name hurricanes.
But it's a really cool database.
Instead of, well, imagine kaiju that are just named like the names of her. I'm afraid to say any one because it sounds like irreverent towards all the people that have died to hurricanes.
Kaiju Bethany. Kaiju Marcus. Kaiju.
Can you imagine if they were like, we got a category 5 kaiju, codename Sarah, like, just like generic name.
Watch out, Sarah's flanking around you.
I kind of love that actually. Like that giant category 5 at the end is like code name
Martha.
Martha's the best kaiju name.
Martha is a good kaiju name, honestly.
I really love that.
And if that's what the lore is, if that's what the world's like, the Jaegers have to be named things like Jonathan.
Hi, my name's Raleigh. This is my Jaeger, Jonathan. Been through a lot together.
Makes me think of that meme about people naming their cats and like the different categories of cat names.
Yeah.
And one of them is just full human name.
I do think it's funny to name cats human names.
Bartholomew.
That's a great cat name.
Because it's the Mew. There's a Mew in there.
Oh, that's true.
And a Barth. Which cats barth all over the place all the time. I was not allowed to name one of our cats Pants. And I'm very upset about that.
That. Another category of cat name.
Just
Perfectly
object.
valid.
Down, Pants. No scratching. Pants barfed again.
I support you naming a cat Pants.
What do you got so far, Victoria, for Jaeger names?
I thought you were back for cat names.
Oh,
Could be both.
What if your Jaeger name was just your name and then you added big in front of it?
Big Victoria.
So you're Victoria, and you pilot Big Victoria.
It's Victoria, but big. I haven't been thinking about Jaeger names. I've been too invested in our conversation about cat names.
My Jaeger's name is Firestar.
Oh, that's pretty dope.
Yes! I don't know. Give me some time. I'll come up with a good Jaeger name.
Okay, I expect you to insert it here in the edit.
Okay, I thought Lunar Nightshade would be a cool Jaeger name.
Wow, what a cool name.
Yeah, that was really great.
Except he said in the middle of Gino clapping. Lunar Nightshade.
What a cool name.
Yeah, that was really great. And that's the first time we've said that.
What if it's actually bad? What if I make the edit and I'm like, guys, I thought of it. I put it in the episode. And you're like, that's not a good name.
I like it.
Listen, my Jaeger's name was Jonathan. It's going to be better than that. Or Big Gino. Like
Big Gino. Bum 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 bum. That's your motif.
Oh, thank you.
Bum 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 bum.
Listener,
I'm just imagining two giant legs.
listener, write us in if you think Michael should create themes and motifs for all three of us.
Oh no.
Oh, you could.
I can't do that. I can't do Tom
Victoria,
Morello.
Listen, Victoria's got a kazoo in hers
Oh,
Yeah.
that's all we need.
because famously skilled kazoo
Yeah,
player.
Victoria, the famously skilled kazooer.
Or
Kazooist.
Kazooist.
Or Victoria sounds suspiciously like a Sonic theme. These
Oh
are
my
two
gosh.
very small parts of your life, Victoria, and I've expanded them into your theme now.
Sonic and kazoos?
Because when you did a kazoo cover once,
Yeah, I know, but where's Sonic come from?
because of your,
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I told
already
you
forgot
it was
about
such a small part of your life you don't even remember.
Literally a speck. I thought you were going to call it other more significant characters.
Because you remind me of Sonic the Hedgehog. Your
Thanks.
love of chili dogs and going fast. Those are the only things I know about Sonic.
Those giant white
I
gloves
thought
you
you were
wear
going
all
to say
the
those
time.
are the only things I know about you.
We've been working together for years and years, and I've somehow picked up none of your personality quirks. I only know you like chili dogs, which is also not necessarily true.
Drift compatible.
We're in a Jaeger and we put on the helmets. We're like drifting, and you look into my mind. You see a bunch of like memories and like flashbacks. I look at your mind. It's just a chili dog rotating.
I have like a steel trap mind where like not even drift compatibility, not even the drift can unlock my deepest, darkest secrets. Oh my gosh.
Pentecost is in the room, like looking at my stats, like what the.
Okay, well, we've gone on some tangents, but let's bring it back. Does anyone have any last Pacific Rim thoughts?
I'd eat a kaiju. Want to know what that tastes like? You could slice the kaiju really thin and then batter and fry it like an alligator, because they probably taste like they have like reptile features, right? But like I feel like if it's too thick, it'll be too gamey and chewy. But also the best thing about kaiju is they'd be consistent because they're cloned, so they'd always taste the same.
I thought you said you'd date a kaiju.
I would not date a kaiju. I don't think we're drift compatible. But I would eat a kaiju.
Okay, now there's enough online dating services out there that I want one that's called Drift Compatible.
Oh, that's so true.
They dropped the ball on the sequel.
Ugh.
Would have made the sequel better. Can I talk about the sequel for a second?
Yeah,
Okay,
go for
go.
it.
Gino puts down his water bottle, but instead of acting like he's putting a gun on a table, it looks like he's just drawing a gun and pointing it at the room.
There's a lot happening, but my main complaint, actually there's two, but they're very closely tied together. Charlie Day is the villain. Newt is the villain.
I do know that about it.
He gets possessed. He goes off on a complete like character assassination. He's like, I'm evil now. I worship the Jaegers because I drifted with them and now
Or
I
the
think like
kaiju.
them. Yeah. Sorry. Kaiju.
In a vacuum, I'm not like unopposed to the idea.
Right. But his connection with British Keane Man,
Yeah.
gone. Right? Their
Yeah.
love, gone. They never resolved that.
Huh.
And
Is
the
British
big-
They
Keane
were
Man in the
cowards.
sequel?
I don't even know. I don't remember. But I think he is, and he's just like off doing his own thing. But in the final fights, the big final fight, there's like 5 Jaegers. They're piloted by children because that's cool. They all weigh like 4 pounds. They're all doing backflips and whatever. They have like laser whips. It's nuts. They're also like really skinny. All the Jaegers are really thin, which is like, I want my Jaeger to be like a big, bulky hunk of rust, right? Like the Russian Jaeger, that's the best Jaeger because it has
Super
thing
cool.
it can do, and it's punch.
It's a giant nuclear silo on legs.
Yeah. Charlie Day's like, they're beating my kaiju. Mind masters, what do I do? And they're like, use the super kaiju. And like, Charlie Day's like, summoning super master kaiju. And out come 1 million tiny little worms. Right? Just like a flood of them, like flooding through the city, like this big hive mind, like liquid of just like these big, thick slugs.
Sure.
And you're like, oh my God, that's actually a fascinating concept. You have these giant kaijus, and the only way to beat them is to build giant Jaegers. And so the counter for that is to build 1 million tiny kaijus. Like, how do you defeat, like,
It's like the concept of like, would you rather fight like one like Hulk-sized duck or like a bunch of like duck-sized Hulks?
Yeah. I think how they make this little slugs is that like the defeated bodies of the rest of the kaiju like melt into these slugs or something like that.
Okay.
So they're like recycling the bodies of the kaiju. I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, what an interesting problem they have to solve now. No. All the little bugs slurp together to make the big kaiju.
Aww.
It's bigger. That means it's scarier. And then Charlie Day's like, aha, I have the iPad. Go, big kaiju. I control you with my iPad or something. And it's so dumb.
Just like poor Charlie Day standing in front of a green screen.
It's this entire movie of like questionable choice. Also, I think they kill Mako.
Yeah, I read that.
Like she's like, I'm in a helicopter, and then like an evil Jaeger's like, and then it's dumb.
I did hear
it's
that.
so dumb. But like a whole movie full of interesting choices, fascinating choices. And then the one time in my theater going experience where I would go, oh, that's a great concept. And then immediately just squashed it. And I was like, this movie's unforgivable. No.
I think they looked at Pacific Rim and they're like, why did people like this movie? And they were like, well, there are a lot of monster fights, so we got to give them bigger and better monster fights. And then they like Newt's character, so I guess we'll like do something with him, but they like totally didn't understand the whole like enemies to lovers concept.
Yes, you're right. They said, oh, they like these specific things, we'll pull them out into the sequel. But it's the context around them. And it's the human element. It's the characters. It's the drift.
You can't just package and market these things like they're superficial toys.
Making a sequel and making an adaptation, very, very similar processes in which when you look back at the original, you can't pick and choose what you liked and just pull it out into a void and hope that works.
Yeah, very good points.
It's got to be like a web. It's got to be a structure.
It's got to be multiple parts put together into the form of a giant robot.
Wait, what are you saying?
I'm saying that by the time tanks, jets, and missiles took it down, 4 days and 35 bajillion miles later, cities were ruined, thousands dead. We erected a monument to the lost and mourned our dead and moved on. And then, a year later or something, it happened again. And then we went, you know what'll solve this? Big old giant metal fists and robots and people piloting them and walking around inside and having a good old time. And that's what we did. And it solved all our problems. The world united under the collective force of giant robot battles. That's a little bit of the opening monologue to the movie.
I think they should take that and replace it.
I think more movies need serious monologues said by a guy who doesn't quite remember. And then, what happened? Right, and then another one came out.
Doubles back like 3 times. Wait, no, that was before that.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, I haven't seen this movie, but David Lynch's Dune, like the princess, like explaining things to the audience and then fading away and then coming back and going, oh yes, I forgot one thing. Here's some extra information.
Dune, another movie where there's a big monster.
Yeah. They don't do giant robots though.
They don't.
And I think that's where they went wrong.
Yeah.
That's why the Holy War happens.
Mm-hmm. If Paul was in a big robot and he was drift compatible with the Emperor. He could have solved all their problems. Any other Pacific Rim thoughts, Victoria?
I'm checking my list. Shout out to Hong Kong. I was gonna go into this whole thing where I was like, I really like it's really fun that it's like set in Hong Kong and like because like it's such like a beautiful city, like the vibrant colors and blah blah blah, but all and then like the random little bits of Cantonese that they throw in.
Mm-hmm.
I like the like bits of Cantonese walla. Like in the base, there's always like a lady who's like speaking over the PA, like the warning message. It's like she says it in Cantonese and then she says it in English. I'm always like, wow.
Speaking of voices, though, the voice of GLaDOS.
Oh,
as the
totally
AI.
Forgot.
Oh yeah,
the voice of Gladys from Totally Spies.
Oh gosh.
No, it's GLaDOS. They got GLaDOS.
From
great.
the Portal games.
Wow.
Again, details upon details.
There's no reason to do that. But someone ostensibly, Guillermo del Toro, was like, yeah, that's cool. Put that in there.
Yeah. I'm sure that like he and the rest of the crew just had such a fun time making this movie. And I love that for them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go watch it again.
When you do, make sure that you have captions on and like look at and listen to what like the pilots are saying during the fight sequences in their suits, because it feels like a lot of that time is like, all right, and now you're punching this kaiju. Okay, and now we got you, and react to this.
Yeah.
Because like there's a moment where like the two Australian pilots and Striker Eureka are like trying to punch one of the kaiju, and one of them yells, "Yeah, our power move!" And they're like punching is both like totally out of sync. Like the younger guy is like wailing on him like he's going super fast, and the older guy is just kind of like slug and another slug.
They're not drifting well together.
It's
the
the
father
best.
son. You know.
Our power move.
This is another reason why I'm like, this is corny as hell, and it's perfect.
It's great.
Sorry, you're gonna have to meow that.
It's okay. Wow. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. My name's Gina Jang, and this is my terrible, terrible Australian accent. It might drift just like they do in the movie. It might drift a little bit. I'm so sorry, Australia. You're a wonderful country. Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. This has been our Pacific Rim episode. Hey, if you like this episode, consider leaving a rating and subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, you can email us at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com or find us at Instagram at nostalgiaclubpodcast. I'm pretty sure I got that right.
Yeah. Good job.
Woo.
And until next time.
Go watch Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Think about the platonic ideal of romance in Pacific Rim.
You can group into the question of would you love me if I was a worm? Do you think you and I are drift compatible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one just like took Tumblr by a storm for a long time.
Just ambush someone in your life with that question, no context.
Can you be not drift compatible with someone and still have a healthy like relationship with them?
I think so.
Yeah.
You can have a relationship.
Oh, whoa.
Whoa. Michael's like, if we're not drift compatible, we can't be friends anymore.
No, I'm saying there's a lot of people that have come and gone and been with each other their entire lives and raised new generations, and they're not necessarily drift compatible. That's why we need to get on that technology so we can make a dating service called Drift Compatible.
I mean, I guess you can't say that you miscommunicated because you can literally read each other's thoughts. Yeah.
And then tenderly touch each other's foreheads to each other on the ocean.
Yeah.
They're reading each other's thoughts, and now their thought helmets are close together. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
They're thought helmets.
They're
Helmets.
They're head spheres. They're brain holders.
Brain tanks.
They're brain tanks.
Wow.
Until next time.
I
could not keep it up.
That's okay.
Come on.
We're on like different sections of the song.